The storm came faster than the sensors predicted. One moment, the skies above Tarsus 9 were dust orange and silent, and the next, a maelstrom cracked the heavens in half. Commander Elias Rourke didn't wait for full diagnostics. He punched the override on his down skiff's emergency seal, grabbed his pack, and bolted into the fractured terrain. Lightning carved the ridges in blinding veins. The rain, if it could be called that, hissed as it touched the earth, burning shallow pits into the soil. His boots skidded on loose stone as he scrambled toward the only cover he could see, a jagged break in a rock face that promised shadows and shelter. Inside, the air thickened. Dust and old minerals stirred at his passage as he ducked into the narrow cavern mouth. The storm shrieked behind him, distant thunder echoing like the roar of something monstrous. His helmet read rising pressure and a steep drop in temperature, but the cave remained strangely temperate, almost welcoming. Elias exhaled, a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, and leaned against the rock, trying to slow the surge of panic that still clawed at the edges of his mind. His left arm throbbed. A crash impact from the landing had twisted something in the joint, but adrenaline and suit stabilizers kept it usable for now. He tapped at the suit's wrist panel, initiating a slow scan of the cave interior. No obvious heat signatures. No movement. Just the sediment layers, old erosion lines, and what looked like carvings. He stepped further in. The deeper he went, the more the storm faded into memory, like something from another world. And yet, it was a silence here that felt unnatural, like a void that devoured every sound. Even his own breathing, amplified by his helmet's audio feed, seemed too loud. Elias paused by a curve in the stone and knelt. His gloved fingers brushed over a spiraling symbol etched deep into the wall. It wasn't made by wind or water. It was deliberate, carved with something sharp, something ancient. More symbols followed. Circular patterns, abstract forms, and humanoid shapes with exaggerated limbs and eyes. A language, maybe, or a warning. A soft click sounded in his ear. Suit audio calibration complete. The AI chimed. Recording activated. External inputs normalized. He almost turned the feature off, but something told him to keep it on. "This is Commander Elias Rourke," he said quietly, more out of habit than necessity. "Day 7 post-crash. Ship is unsalvageable. Crew lost. I've taken shelter in a subterranean cave system on Tarsus 9. Atmospheric readings stable. Immediate danger unclear." He trailed off. It felt like something was listening. Hours passed. Or minutes. Time was slippery in here. He found a recess near the cave wall and sat, pulling off his helmet. The air smelled faintly metallic but breathable. He reached into his pack for rations, but found none. The crash must have thrown them. Figures. He leaned his head back, closed his eyes, and listened to quiet. Then he heard it. Not a sound, exactly. A sensation. Like someone whispering directly behind his eyes. "You're the first meal in 500 years. His eyes shot open. He stood in a single breath, snatching his helmet and scanning the cave. Nothing. No life forms detected. Just static across every channel, like the scanners themselves didn't trust what they were seeing. He activated his shoulder light, sweeping it across the interior. Shadows leapt and twisted. The etchings on the walls seemed to shimmer now, as though reacting to the light. Something was here. Something aware. "Who's there?" he barked, voice echoing off stone. "Identify yourself." No response. He paced the space, eyes darting. The voice hadn't been in his ears. It had been in his mind. Deep, cold, starving. His suit's internal diagnostics began to flash anomalies. Brainwave irregularities, elevated cortisol, erratic theta spikes. Hallucinations? Psychological stress? Maybe. But hallucinations didn't speak in languages you'd never learned. He paused again, scanning one of the humanoid figures carved on the wall. Unlike the others, this one was depicted kneeling, its arms outstretched towards something vast and faceless. Around it were dozens, hundreds of smaller figures, curling into themselves like prey. The central figure held something in its chest. A void. No heart. No soul. The whispers came again, more distinct now. So much thought, so much flavor. Come closer. He backed away. The light flickered. Without warning, a shape stepped into view, silent, graceful, impossibly still. Blue-skinned and tall, humanoid but undeniably alien. White hair hung down in strands adorned with bone and crystal. Her eyes, glowing with a soft, opalescent hue, fixed on Elias with neither malice nor mercy. She held a long spear, its head pulsating with dull green light, and moved like a creature both ancient and born a shadow. Her presence filled the space like a second gravity. Elias instinctively raised his hand, palm forward. "I don't want trouble," he said. "I'm just here to survive the storm." She tilted her head, gaze unblinking. He added, slower this time, "I don't know what this place is. I don't know who you are." Her voice didn't come through her mouth. It arrived, instead, like a chord resonating behind his thoughts. You walk into the tomb of silence. You speak as if it is not listening. Elias felt a tremor ripple through the ground beneath his feet. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The cave groaned, not as if under pressure, but as if waking up. "What is it?" he asked, against reason. "What's down here?" She stepped forward, just enough of the spear's tip to glint in the light. Her expression didn't change, but her thoughts pressed harder. It was sealed before memory. It dreams beneath. It waits. You, stranger, have opened the breath of stone. Now it knows you exist. He stared at her, unsure whether to run, fight, or fall to his knees. "Then help me stop it." There was a pause, a long silence. It cannot be stopped, only endured. You brought the scent of thought. That is enough. The maw wakes. Behind her, deep within the corridor of black rock, a sound began, wet, slithering, like muscle dragged across gravel. A low hum pulsed in the cave's chest. The stone began to warm. The symbols along the walls throbbed faintly, red like veins beneath skin. Elias turned toward the tunnel, hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his plasma cutter. His breath came in steady, shallow pulls. The alien woman moved to stand between him and the sound, her spear planted firm in the ground. "You should not have come here," she said aloud, for the first time. Her voice, though soft, held the weight of centuries. "I didn't mean to," he replied. She nodded once. Intent changes nothing. Behind them, the sound grew louder, hungrier, and Elias understood then that the storm outside had only ever been the bait. Elias followed the blue-skinned figure without protest, though every step deeper into the cave tightened a knot in his gut. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins, casting ghostly colors across jagged stone. The tunnel narrowed and curved, always curving, as if spiraling toward a center that refused to be still. The sound behind them, wet and dragging, had faded, not because it had stopped, but because it no longer needed to chase. It was patient. It knew its prey had nowhere else to go. She had not given him a name. Elias referred to her in his head simply as a sentinel. She walked ahead of him with a grace that seemed impossible on such treacherous terrain. Her spear glowed with that same cold green light, casting flickering shadows against walls covered in more carvings, more symbols that seemed to breathe when not being looked at directly. "Where are you taking me?" Elias asked, his voice rough and low. His throat felt dry, his suit's filtration system straining in the humid, mineral-thick air. The sentinel didn't turn. "To the heart, to what you have disturbed." He wanted to protest, to demand more, but something about her presence, a mix of authority and silence, made argument feel juvenile. His instincts told him she was not entirely alive. Or perhaps, not entirely now. She was memory and matter woven together, like an echo that refused to fade. As they walked, the symbols along the walls began to shift. Not physically, but in meaning. Elias realized with a jolt that he could understand them, not through language, but through knowing. A rush of alien sensations flooded his mind. Pain nodded with reverence. Hunger cloaked in ritual, voices begging the stone to remember. He stumbled slightly, grabbing the rock wall to steady himself. Images burst behind his eyes. Cities of crystal spires swallowed by roots of darkness. A planet once vibrant turning inward, decaying under the weight of a single thought too powerful to contain. The Vereen, he muttered aloud, the word forming unbidden. The sentinel stopped and turned. You see, the memory bleeds into you now. It is a gift or a curse, depending on your path. Who were they? Her expression remained still, but sorrow hung in the air between them. We were the guardians of breath, the architects of silence. We built a cage for what should not have been born, and we bound it with our minds. But minds decay. Dreams unravel. They continued onward. What is it? Elias asked after a moment. The thing back there, the maw? The sentinel walked in silence before answering. It is not a creature. It is not a god. It is not one thing. It is thought that ate itself. It was born of despair and grew by feeding on fear. The first Vereen who touched it believed they had created a being of infinite knowledge. They were wrong. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that stole Elias's breath. It was unlike any natural formation he'd ever seen. The walls curved upward in smooth, impossibly precise arcs, forming a massive dome above. At its center, suspended by nothing, hovered a black orb the size of a small transport pod. It pulsed with a heartbeat, so deep it vibrated his bones. The chamber wasn't just a room. It was a prison. This is where it waits. Elias whispered. Sleeps, she corrected. Not waits. It has no concept of time, only consumption. The storm drew you here. But it is your presence, your thoughts, that open the seal. It knows you now. The orb flickered, and a voice slithered through the air. Not a sound, not words. It was hunger made audible. Elias fell to one knee. His visor flashed with warning signs. Cognitive overload, neural interference, synthetic synapse rejection. He tore the helmet off, gasping, sweat pouring down his face. You said it was sealed, he managed to say through clenched teeth. The sentinel stood tall beside him, sealed by minds that have long since crumbled. I remain the last ember, but I am not enough. Elias looked up at her. Why me? What do you want from me? Her gaze, for first time, softened. Not want. Need. You are not Vereen, but your mind is unshaped by this place. You are new. That makes you sharp. I'm not a weapon. You are now. The orb pulsed again. Something inside the blackness moved. Impossible shapes, folding geometries that hurt to look at. Elias turned away, bow rising in his throat. He had felt fear before. Real fear. When his squad was ambushed on Arcturus Station, when his daughter fell sick and the medbay failed her, when the emergency beacon went silent 2 days after crash. But this wasn't fear. This was erasure. The sense that he wasn't just going to die, but be unmade. I can't fight that, he said hoarsely. The sentinel knelt beside him, her hand brushing his forehead. Cool, grounding. Then you must contain it. Bind it again, but not with stone, with purpose. Elias swallowed hard. And what does that mean? She stood, lifting her spear. Come, there is one who remembers the shape of the cage. If they still endure, you may yet have a chance. He rose, legs unsteady, and followed her out of the chamber. As they walked, he looked back once. The orb remained suspended in the center of the room, dark and humming. But for just a second, Elias could have sworn he saw a face in the black, a reflection, or perhaps an invitation. They moved through another corridor now, this one older, less maintained. Debris littered the ground. The air grew thinner. Every breath felt like drawing an ash. Here, even the light from the sentinel's spear dimmed. What happens if we fail? He asked. She did not answer. Ahead, a low archway led into darkness deeper than the void outside. The carvings here were not just decorative. They were barriers, sigils etched in desperation. Some had been scratched away, broken from within. Elias hesitated. Is this where your people died? The sentinel's voice trembled. No, this is where we beg to forget. They entered the chamber together. Inside was a single throne of bone and obsidian, fused into the rock itself. Upon it sat a figure, skeletal and blue, barely intact. But as they stepped forward, its eyes ignited with dim white light. Not alive, not dead, something in between. Elias felt its gaze pierce him, dissecting thought from memory. The sentinel bowed. Revered elder, we bring the flame of mind. The maw stirs again. The ancient figure did not move, but the air changed. A voice entered Elias's head, older than language, colder than the void. So it feeds once more, and you would chain hunger with a thread of flesh. Elias stepped forward. If I have to, you will not survive it. I'm not here to survive, he said, fists clenched. I'm here to stop it. The silence that followed was endless. Then the elder lifted one bony finger. Then kneel and learn how to be forgotten. Elias dropped to his knees. The black behind his eyes swallowed him whole. Elias fell through memory that wasn't his. Not a fall in space, but in self. His consciousness spiraled downward into a cold abyss lined with shattered minds. Each fragment a whisper, a scream, a prayer never answered. He saw glimpses of the Vereen Empire in its twilight, a civilization of silence and vast intellect. Their cities built from crystal thought and harmonic stone. He witnessed the creation of the Maw. Not summoned, not born, but formed by the collective despair of a people who feared their own greatness. They had tried to distill knowledge into purity, to refine thought into divine clarity. What they created instead was hunger, an intelligence without empathy, desire without purpose. It began consuming not matter, but identity, swallowing names, beliefs, history. The Vereen fought back. But how do you battle something that exists in every unspoken doubt? They sealed it in the deepest chamber of their world and buried their own memories to keep the seal intact. Now, Elias was being shown how to do the same, not through force, but through surrender. He awoke with blood at the corners of his eyes and the taste of copper on his tongue. The ancient Vereen elder sat as still as before, but the air around him crackled with latent energy. You saw, the sentinel said. Elias nodded, dizzy. Not all of it, but enough. You understand what it means to cage again? Barely, he rasped. But I think I know what I have to do. The elder extended a hand, its fingers trembling with age or memory. Elias hesitated, then placed his hand atop it. The bone was cold. Immediately, something transferred. Information, not language. A memory pattern, ancient and viral, designed to overwrite perception. This is the key, the elder murmured through the ether. Not a weapon, a forgetting. Feed it to the maw, and if your will is stronger, it will retreat into sleep once more. If my will isn't stronger, you will become its mouth. The sentinel offered Elias a small, crystalline shard, barely longer than a finger. It pulsed with faint light, like a dying star. This holds a lattice, she said. You carry it in your mind, but the shard focuses it. It must reach the core. He stared at it, knowing what it meant. He would have to go back to the chamber, into the center, into it. The walk back to the caverns was quieter than before. Even the breathing stones seemed to hush, as if watching. Elias had seen war, had faced alien storms, starvation, death. But this was different. This was the weight of annihilation pressing into his skull. Every step closer, the maw felt like walking toward the edge of a thought you couldn't take back. The sentinel walked beside him. She no longer looked so composed. Her shoulders hung lower, and her steps dragged slightly. You're fading, he said. I was never fully here, she replied. The maw feeds on the past. Every time you remember, it takes more of me. You're a memory construct. I was a soul once, she said. But the Vereen had to sacrifice more than blood to seal the hunger. They sacrificed themselves. Now I am a shadow walking the bones of what was. He wanted to tell her that she was more than that she mattered, but he knew better. Truth was a currency best spent sparingly in places like this. As they reached the edge of the Maw's chamber, Elias felt the pressure and his head triple. The ore was no longer pulsing quietly. It had opened. A fracture ran through its center like a mouth forming, sucking the air and the light and the certainty of time. It was not a place. It was a desire that had taken shape. You must go alone now, the sentinel said. Why? If I go with you, it will feed on my pattern first. I am old, familiar, easy prey. But you are unknown, wild. It cannot consume what it cannot define. Elias drew in a breath. His suit's HUD was mostly dead now, systems flickering with warnings that no longer mattered. He tucked the shard into the small compartment over his chest and stepped forward. The air thickened like gel. Each movement felt like dragging himself through the weight of regret. The moment he crossed the threshold of the chamber, the Maw noticed. It shifted, not physically, but perceptually. The sense of space buckled. Up became down. His name tried to leave his tongue, and was swallowed before it could be spoken. Elias Rourke, he said aloud, gritting his teeth. Commander, Earthborn, survivor. The Maw responded. Images surged, his daughter coughing in a hospital bed, his squad mates torn apart on Arcturus, the silence, his escape pod after the skiff exploded. It wasn't reading his mind. It was wearing it, trying on his memories like skins to see what fit best. He staggered toward the center of the chamber. The ground pulsed beneath him, trying to convince him it didn't exist. His limbs felt too long. His thoughts echoed with a voice not his own. There is no you, only the echo of meat. Give in. He reached the pulsing fracture and fell to his knees. The shard glowed through his chest plate. With trembling hands, he retrieved it and held it up. The Maw recoiled, not in fear, but in confusion. The light from the shard was memory made virus, the lattice of forgetting given form. You can't eat what you don't remember, Elias whispered. The Maw surged forward. A tide of black mass poured toward him from all sides, trying to drown him in sorrow, in absence, in longing. But Elias had made peace with loss. He had been alone before. He had already buried everything that mattered. I remember enough to forget you, he said, and he plunged a shard into the heart of the fracture. The silence that followed was an emptiness. It was release, a moment stretched into forever where all thought ceased. Not death, not sleep, just the absence of hunger. The Maw collapsed inward with a roarless scream. Space folded like a closing book. The orb cracked, splintered, and then disintegrated into ash that wasn't ash at all, but fading dream stuff. Elias collapsed beside it, breathing ragged. His suit had shut down completely. Only the cold remained. He felt the Sentinel's presence before he saw her. You did it, she said. He nodded, barely. She knelt beside him. Her form flickered, unstable. You won't last long in this body, she said gently. I didn't expect to. We will remember. Will it come back? Perhaps. If someone digs too deep, thinks too hard. He laughed weakly. Isn't that what we're best at? Her smile was sad. Yes. The cavern ceiling groaned. Cracks split the walls. You have to leave, she said. I can't walk. She stood, then bent and placed a hand over his heart. Then I will carry the last of you. Light burst from her chest, blinding, brilliant. Her form unraveled into strands of energy that wrapped around Elias's body. Warmth surged through him, not physical but spiritual. Her consciousness passed into him like a final breath, guiding him up, out, away. As he stumbled through the passage, the chamber behind him collapsed. The Maw was buried once more. Elias didn't look back. The sky above Tarsus 9 was no longer bleeding fire. The storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie calm that coated the horizon in amber haze. The world felt hollow, as if even the wind had forgotten how to breathe. Elias staggered across the jagged plain. Each step labored, his body burning with exhaustion and the residue of something far worse, something not quite physical. Behind him, the cave mouth stood silent, collapsed into itself like a sealed wound. Whatever lived below was gone, or buried again, if only for a time. His suit systems remained dormant, fried beyond repair. The cracked helmet swung loosely from his grip, a useless relic. The crystalline shard that once pulsed at his chest was dark now, its glow extinguished with the Maw's retreat. Still, he kept it tucked inside his belt pouch, unable to throw it away. It was a reminder of her, of the Maw, of what it meant to resist something you couldn't kill. He dropped to his knees beside a ridge and gazed toward the distant wreckage of his skiff, a blackened outline against the horizon, its nose buried in a dune of rust-colored sand. The emergency beacon had long since failed. No blinking lights, no hum of energy, just silence. He scanned the emptiness and pressed a hand to his chest half expecting the Sentinel's voice to return, soft and sharp within his skull. But she was gone. Her presence, once tangled within him like a guiding thread, had unraveled the moment he stepped back into the sunlight. "Elias Rourke," he whispered. Saying his own name out loud was a small act of defiance. After everything, he needed to hear it, to believe it still belonged to him. He slept without meaning to, slumped against stone as red twilight deepened to night. No dreams came, only a long, gray silence that pressed against the edges of his consciousness like frost on glass. When he woke, the stars above were sharp and uncaring, the same constellations that had guided him to this place, now looking down as if nothing had changed. In a way, maybe nothing had. The Maw had not escaped, but it had tasted him, knew him. A part of him wondered if, by some cruel twist, that was his victory. His body ached with more than fatigue. The Maw had left something behind, an echo, a presence deep in the folds of his mind, dormant but undeniable, a sliver of the void, sleeping under his skin. But he didn't fear it. Not anymore. He had faced it, looked into the pit of pure hunger and not fallen. That had to mean something. Elias stumbled back to the crash site by midday, skin blistered from Tarsus's sun, lips cracked and bleeding. The skiff's hull groaned as he climbed atop it and yanked open the maintenance hatch with the last of his strength. Inside, half the systems were dead, but one terminal still flickered faintly when he jammed in a bypass cell from his wrist unit. He sat before it, fingers trembling, and began to type. Commander Elias Rourke, Tarsus 9, entry number 47. I found the source of the anomaly. It's not a weapon. It's not a creature. It's what happens when thought becomes starvation. He paused, blinking away sweat. The cave system is no longer accessible. I ensured it collapsed. The Maw has returned to sleep. But this place, it remembers the stone, the air, even the silence has teeth. If you're reading this, don't come looking for it. Don't investigate. Don't dig. Curiosity is the language it speaks. Thought is what it feeds on. Forget this world. Let it die alone. He saved a log and rerouted power to the emergency comm relay. The signal was weak, likely barely reaching orbit, if that, but he triggered it anyway. A flicker of hope pulsed in the console's glow. Somewhere out there, someone might hear, and maybe they'd listen. Night returned. Elias lay atop the ruined skiff, watching the stars as his body cooled in the descending chill. He thought of Earth, of the gravity he once cursed and now longed for, of a daughter whose laugh he could barely remember, of a voice that spoke only through memory and had called him brave when he felt like nothing more than prey. He heard something in the wind, then a whisper not from the Maw, not from the echo, but from within himself. It wasn't words. It was a feeling, stillness, resolve. He wasn't just a survivor. He was a seal, a boundary, flesh and will forge into a line the Maw could not cross. Far on the horizon, something shimmered. Faint, distant, a dropship flare? He didn't allow himself to hope. Not yet. He reached into his pouch and pulled out the darkened shard, holding it against the stars. It no longer pulsed, but it caught the light. For a moment, it almost looked like it breathed. "You're not coming with me," he murmured. "This ends here." He drew back his arm and hurled it across the dust. The shard spun through the air, arcing out of sight into the dunes beyond. Gone. The stars overhead did not blink, but Elias did. Once. Slowly. Then he stood and walked toward the light.